This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Welcome to episode 179 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
And I'm Jocelyn and Jerrod.
And we going to start out with kind of the biggest shocking movie news over the weekend. Happened late Friday. The death of Chadwick Boseman, star of course, The Black Panther, other films such as 42, Get On Up, what is it, 21 Bridges, the one he had with the Russos.
Yeah, it was in The Five Bloods a couple months ago.
The Five Bloods is the one we covered recently. Kind of a big shock to a lot of people. I got the alert on my phone, and I immediately messaged Cody, and you were... you didn't believe it. Like, it was an unbelievable thing to hear that...
Yeah, it's one of those things that you read and you're like, wait, is this a typo, or is this like, did someone make a terrible mistake? And I think it's up there with like, the last time I remember being this stunned by something was like, it's like Heath Ledger or
Kobe Bryant,
or Kobe, like the also. Oh, I'm blanking. There was one other that was really big recently. Maybe not so much recently. I mean, like Philip Seymour Hoffman was pretty shocking. Those types of things, and especially with Chadwick Boseman in this case, where he was sick for quite a long time and nobody knew. Robin Williams is another one too that was kind of shocking.
Well, it's like a pure tragedy because it's Kobe Bryant's the same way. Like, it was just a freak accident. Chadwick Boseman has colon cancer at 43, which is pretty terrifying. I don't know, Jocelyn, how did you find out? Like everybody else did around the same time?
Yeah, same. I started getting some alerts, and it really was shocking, just like you guys are saying. And immediately, it felt like Kobe all over again. I thought it was some accident that happened, like some freak thing.
Yeah,
and
like
then
a car crash.
Yeah, something like that. And this year, I mean, I think we've all gotten used to those alerts this year, sadly. But then to find out that he had been, kind of privately fighting this cancer diagnosis was like, it just added this element of like such heroism, that everyone kind of already suspected that he kind of represented. But then especially because I just can't imagine having that diagnosis and not getting like a, like a press release or like a publicity, like their team like announcing it somehow. And then, do you know what I mean?
Well, right. And then to be, he reportedly had the diagnosis 4 years ago. And in that time, he's in massive films, including the first Black Panther film, which was huge, and then both Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, which he has a smaller role in those, obviously, but he's no less a major part of the story than he any other character would have been.
Well, also the intense prep work, because he was also known for like doing all of his own stunts and stuff too. So he was doing bulking up for roles and doing intense stunt work, all while being very ill. So
Stage 3, my God.
Well, I mean, even that would have been like right before his debut in it would have come like right after his debut as the character in 2016.
Yeah, right? 2016 was Civil
War. I mean, it's just and he was in The Five Bloods. He's got another film that hasn't been released yet. He had a very small filmography, but very huge impact especially because of the Black Panther character, which can't be overstated, I don't think.
Yeah. The kind of doors that he opened with that kind of role will be seen for years and years. But yeah, I mean, he's only a film actor since 2012. So he's only been in like 13 movies or something like that.
Right.
And he has one of the things that he was known for too is biopic movies. He's played Thurgood Marshall, and he's played Jackie Robinson and James Brown, and I think that he was really. I don't know if either of you have seen Get On Up, but
I have not. I didn't hear great things about the movie itself.
The movie itself is fine, but it is really elevated by Boseman, who's it's the best thing I've ever the best I've ever seen him in anything. Is Get On Up, and it's just one of those those actors who just kind of become the people,
Right.
and that's sort of what he was able to do. Like, and even in like movies that aren't great, like he's really great in the movie Draft Day, and that movie I don't care about, but he's great in that movie.
Yeah, he had.
You said
Go ahead.
the Get On Up is on HBO Plus, right?
HBO Max.
HBO Max. Yes. Sorry, I'm gonna watch that one.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing him in Justified as a bit role, small part in that. Again, it's just a huge shock, and especially, I think, especially, this year has been terrible for a lot of reasons for a lot of people, and to see someone who was again like a pioneer in opening up these doors, with the first mainstream big superhero film with a predominantly black cast from a black director. This is something that affected so many people and was a huge hit and was a really good movie to boot. And the fact that the guy who led it up is gone at 43 is almost unbelievable. Especially with something like colon cancer, because there are plenty of people that have died young in Hollywood that are huge. I think maybe the other one you were thinking of, Cody, was Paul Walker.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Just sort of a tragic accident at in his early 40s. But to have it be something that you don't really think of as affecting a fit 42-year-old or 43-year-old man is kind of an extra blow, and I think probably will
well, and what
sadly,
I was thinking is as y'all were mentioning, like he just started really, like his star was just rising right when he found out that his life was probably on the opposite direction. Like he got his cancer diagnosis the same year that he became Black Panther. Like that had to have been just the most, I just can't even imagine dealing with that. Like you're all of a sudden achieving everything that you've worked so hard for your entire life, and at the same time you have this diagnosis that is not good, and it's just I just can't believe he did it all privately. That's just the most shocking part.
I would assume there are a few people professionally that know. I would just assume that because and it's one of those things that it's going to be discussed. Like Black Panther was a huge hit. There was no real rush to get a Black Panther 2 out, right, from what I understand, and I assume that maybe someone knew his condition. I don't know if colon cancer is as big of a death sentence as something like pancreatic cancer typically is. I know it's not good, and I guess it'll probably, the bright side of this, if you can look at it that way, is it'll probably bring awareness to that being an issue that young people can face. I'm not relishing the idea that a colonoscopy might be in my near future, but knowing that this guy who's in way better shape than I ever will be died from colon cancer is pretty eye-opening. Just a year older than I am. So that's really all to say. I think just big tragedy that everyone's kind of processing. Tonight, ABC is showing Black Panther without commercial interruption and with like a retrospective of Chadwick Boseman's career afterwards. So,
I mean, it's definitely worth checking out some of the stuff that he's done. Even in The Five Bloods, he's one of the most magnetic people in that movie for sure, and it's a great role for him.
Yeah, he has an interesting role in that movie. He's the one that's being idealized, and he's the sole young actor among these older actors, and they only ever remember him as the young man because that's how he died, and there's no and he interacts with them all as old men. It's an interesting take on that, the way that character is portrayed. So
but I mean, like HBO Max has Get On Up. I think 42 is on some streaming services. I have not seen. I never saw Marshall, but I heard that it was pretty decent.
I didn't see that one either.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So we'll hear more about that for sure in the next few days of some sort of more tributes pouring out. Anyway, let's move on to something else that we want to address right away. We are getting into the season where more stuff is coming out in theaters. Mm-hmm. For example, this week The New Mutants is out finally against all odds. Cody and I have been talking about this movie for years now with each other, and it finally is hitting theaters as the last gasp of the Fox X-Men universe, allegedly. And then Tenet hits next week. We aren't covering them because we'd have to go to theaters to watch them. And we are, along with several other outlets that I'm aware of, taking a stand and not doing that because we don't feel it's safe. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, to head off the criticism right away. Yeah, we get to see movies for free sometimes, a lot of the times.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. This quarantine's been a little different, but you know, a press screening is still a theater full of people, and we're not really comfortable heading out to that. So,
well, also, I mean, look, we will happily cover anything that we get access to at home, but there's a certain level of obstinance that's coming from Warner Brothers in particular with Tenet, where it's just, you know, it's to the point where, and I don't think we'll cover this in full, but Warner Brothers has now said that they will not let Tenet show in drive-ins unless it's also showing in theaters in that city. So since theaters aren't open in LA right now, that means Tenet will not be allowed to open in drive-ins in LA. And it's just ridiculous, especially because drive-ins are pulling in money. Like Unhinged opened last week, I guess it was, and the top 5 theaters in the country for Unhinged were drive-ins. You know, like there's actually a resurgence of drive-ins, and now, you know, Warner Brothers is not doing that. So, you know, it's not as if we're going to really make a massive mark by not covering it. So, but right. I still think it's just something just based on principle that, you know, if the only option that we have is to go see it in a theater, and then we have to like plug the movie and say, hey, if you want to watch it, you know, go to the theater. It's just something about it feels weird, which is
irresponsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I don't feel I don't feel it's necessary or even in good conscience to recommend someone go see something like The New Mutants in a movie theater right now, much less myself. Tenet, I think the ship has sailed on Tenet. I think that Warner Brothers and I assume Christopher Nolan has kind of polarized the audience enough with this to say, hey, I don't give a shit that you want to show this in theaters. It's just not safe. And I don't understand. I mean, I get it. That's Christopher Nolan's thing. He's a big theatrical experience guy. I don't understand why they don't just wait. Because I don't understand what the big deal is. I mean, there was that bizarre Twitter video. Did you see it, Jocelyn, of Tom Cruise going to a theater?
Oh, yes. Yes, Cody
to see
shared
Tenet?
that with me.
It just doesn't make, like, what? I don't understand what this is supposed to be. Like, what's the deal? Like, you went to see a movie. Okay, great. Like, but everyone's still masked up. It's still not safe. I just don't understand the push to get back to stuff like that.
I think it has to do with Scientology. I think there was some Scientology undertones to his video that
Tom
Cruise's. Yes, because he claims that it cured his dyslexia. So I wonder if maybe he's saying, you know, that it just kind of reeked of that to me, but no evidence.
I don't know what's up with Tom Cruise.
Completely,
because he's not pushing to have Top Gun Maverick release.
That's what I want to know.
I think it already got pushed.
Yeah. No, I know, but it wasn't like a big push for that.
I'm surprised.
But he did return. I think they're filming the new Mission Impossible right now, so he at least is a proponent of getting Hollywood back to work.
Yeah, they are doing the new Jurassic World too, but I think it's a bubble set.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tom Cruise is literally going into space in his next movie, so I think he's so out of touch with reality at this point.
I don't give a fuck that he does his own stunts. I don't care. I don't care that it's real. I do not care because it can look just as like it doesn't look any less fake or real than a well-made special effect.
Bigly made.
A bigly made special effect. Like the idea that like, oh, he really hung out on the side of a plane. Like, I don't give a fuck.
The only thing it proves is that he's fucking crazy.
Yeah, don't. It's only for like making of shit. Like, it doesn't affect the plot of the film at all. It doesn't change the stunt at all. It actually probably makes the stunt a little less fantastical because it probably, if it was CGI'd, it probably would have been way more over the top.
Yeah, I mean, look, if the Fast and the Furious movies can show us cars jumping from one tower to another tower through glass, anything is possible. Or what was the one? Didn't someone punch a submarine or something?
I don't remember that one.
Huh. I just watched 2012 recently, and that one was pretty crazy.
I love in 2012 when John Cusack was able to like avoid every obstacle.
Yes, with his
in
limo.
LA with his limousine.
Oh my god! And that just reminded me of Fast and Furious because he drives the limo through a building and then out the other side. It was great.
I punch a submarine.
The Rock and Hobbs and Shaw or something punches something ridiculous.
I don't remember that. I know there was a submarine in the Fate of the Furious because it was like underwater.
Yeah,
under the ice. I mean.
God, what was? I wish I could think of it.
I liked that he yanked a helicopter out of the sky.
Maybe that was it.
That was the one that was.
I saw that in the trailer and was like, not gonna see that.
I wanted to like Hobbs and Shaw more than I did because but the thing is, like, neither one of those guys can take themselves not seriously. I think The Rock sort of can, but when he's like in a dick measuring contest movie like that or Fast and Furious, like, he just can't not be the toughest guy in the movie. So there needed to be it needed a Tyrese to be like the comic relief, or even a Ludacris to be somewhat comic relief, but it had none of that. So
yeah, you just need a Ludacris type.
You need
a Ludacris Bridges.
You need a Ludacris Bridges, or Tyrese Gibson. Though Tyrese has been more of a weird bitch lately. Anyway, do you remember? Did you see Bad Boys for Life, Jocelyn?
No.
Speaking of credits, DJ Khaled is in it.
Oh God, I hate him.
But
sorry, I dislike him.
In his credit at the beginning, it's DJ Khaled. Because that's his name. Because I guess his name is Khaled. I didn't know that.
Oh.
But it was like Khaled, quotation marks, DJ Khaled. Like, what? There's too many Khaleds. Just say DJ Khaled.
I don't know why he's famous, and it bothers me.
Isn't he didn't he make his son like the CEO of his record company or something?
He's
so you have to
super
answer to
misogynistic. He's very problematic.
You have to answer to a 5-year-old.
That wouldn't surprise me. Just add it to the list of things I dislike about DJ Khaled.
Khaled DJ Khaled.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's why we're not covering New Mutants. That's why we won't be covering Tenet.
Going back to that.
Yeah.
That's quite a tangent.
We're not going to recommend you go see something in a theater.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to see something in a theater. So.
But if you must, that's why we cover them.
And there's so much out right now. Like, there is so much out. There's plenty to cover.
There are options. Some of the stuff we talk about is showing theatrically, but you have options that are safe. Like we mentioned, Unhinged. You can go to a drive-in, which is ostensibly a safe option to social distance. So, anything else before we move on?
I don't know, Jerrod. What do you think?
Oh, I totally forgot to mention. That is a swell hat, Cody, from a movie I forgot existed. Mm-hmm. Robert Zemeckis motion capture Beowulf.
Wow, I thought you were just a big fan of medieval
He's like
English
epic poems.
literature.
Yeah. No, I remember distinctly as a paying customer seeing Beowulf in IMAX 3D.
Wow. I never even saw it. I can't.
Me neither.
It had some cool 3D work in it.
But that dead-eyed motion capture stuff of that era was not pleasant to watch.
Yeah,
Wasn't
that
like
was,
Ray? Didn't Ray Winstone play Beowulf, like an
Yes,
old
he
fat
did.
English man?
Yes, he did.
Sounds great.
I legitimately forgot it existed until Cody showed me that hat.
Yeah, it was written by Neil Gaiman though.
Oh, wow.
Is it purposefully distressed, or
Yes, it
have you?
is.
It's just worn because
Because it's from
wear
like
it so
it's from like
often?
2005. That's when
Yeah.
everything was distressed purposefully.
Yeah, it's I'm looking at the voice cast: Ray Winstone, Anthony Hopkins, Robin Wright, Brendan Gleeson, John Malkovich, Crispin Glover, Angelina Jolie. It's a big
Wow.
cast.
Wow, Zemeckis worked with Crispin Glover again. I thought they hated each other. I thought he hated him.
Just voiceover, so maybe they were
Yeah.
in opposite cities.
Maybe. Yeah, great hat, Cody.
Thanks.
Good job. All right, let's go ahead and move on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
First up, we have Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Greetings, my excellent friends.
Do we know you?
I'm Kelly.
Wait, you're Rufus's daughter.
I am, and I've been wanting to meet you my whole life.
It must be very disappointing.
Not at all. We have a problem, gentlemen. Potentially a very serious problem.
About the music?
About the music. They just want to talk to you.
Dude, I got a very bad feeling about this. It'll be fine, Ted. They totally love us in the future, dude.
Dude, our dads are totally in trouble. I feel so bad for them. They've been doing this on their own for the longest time.
Yeah, I wish there was some way we could help them out, you know?
Yeah. But how?
So this is a long in the making sequel to Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which I believe came out in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been 29 years since we've seen Bill S. Preston and Bill S. Preston Esquire, pardon me, and Ted Theodore Logan, of course, played by Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves. Jocelyn, tell us about Bill and Ted Face the Music and what you thought of it.
Sure, my pleasure. So, cut two, they are older gentlemen. I'm not going to guess how old they are, but they're old enough to have
They should be like early 50s, I think.
Yeah, they have
canonically.
like 20-year-old daughters. You might remember they married some women that they picked up in medieval era
The
and brought them
princesses.
back. I'm sorry, the princesses, that's right. And so we catch up with them in current times, and I actually the details about the end of the world are fuzzy to me. They realize that they're visited by Kristen Shaw, who is the daughter of who is the
Rufus, George Carlin.
daughter. Thank you. I'm gonna need your help
So
here.
the end of the world thing. I'll go back. Bill and Ted have written a song that in 600 years is regarded as the thing that brought the world together. So that's the whole.
That's
That's
right.
kind of the plot of the first film. Is that they had to remain together because Ted was gonna get sent to military school because he was failing, and so they had to pass their history test or history final. So they got all these historical figures together, and that's.
I feel like I need to pass this off to you. I mean, you are the Bill and Ted expert.
Well, I did. I also did rewatch them recently, so they refresh in my mind.
Oh,
I'll just
see?
go. I'll just go over it quickly. That the idea that they wrote this song that united the world is in jeopardy because they haven't figured out what it is yet. So that's why Kristen Shaw comes back from the future to help them, to tell them that they need to have it done by a certain time, 7:17 p.m. Otherwise, the whole time and space is going to collapse.
Right. Not
Okay.
just the Earth, but like time and reality is going to implode. So you basically get all the elements from the original movies that you love. You have them, cruising around in their phone booth. But then you also have this new element of their daughters who kind of take on the responsibility of gathering the bandmates that are going to make this song with them. So they're going around also through history to find the best musicians. So they're picking up like Jimi Hendrix and Mozart and Louis Armstrong. And so they're kind of doing their own thing, and they're doing an impression of their dads, which I actually really enjoyed. They're basically the female versions of their fathers. And then so it all comes together. I mean, somehow all of this time travel. Along the way, there's also a robot that's trying to kill them, and they go to hell. Of course, because they need to revisit death.
All right.
You know, we need to have death in there somewhere. But it somehow all works. It sounds insane, and it somehow all works. And they have found a way to reinvent these characters, and to make the story fresh. And I had a great time watching it. I mean, they're just likable morons. They really are. They're just so likable. I had forgotten how much I just enjoyed them being themselves, and how just great the characters are. And there was a lot of cool cameos too. I loved seeing David Grohl pop in, and I don't know, it was fun.
Cody squealed out loud at that.
Did he?
Yeah, that's true.
I think that mansion was the one used in Al Capone's video, or the movie that we watched with Al Capone.
What is it called? What the fuck was that called? I already forgot its name.
Capone, I think.
Was it Capone?
No, it wasn't Capone.
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
If you're talking about the Tom Hardy movie, it's called Capone.
Oh, okay. How did we already forget that, Jerrod?
I don't know. I thought it had a different name.
Anyway, so I think that was the same mansion that they used. That David Grohl came and visited him. But
yeah, because it did look like where he went shooting across the. It does. You're right. I think it might be the same location.
I'm pretty
sure. Or
at
least it looks very similar.
But just a fun ride, and a fun kind of, revisiting these characters that I grew up watching and loving.
Would you say it was an excellent adventure?
I had a very excellent adventure.
Cody, what about you?
Well, I'm going to have a different approach here.
I know. That's why I made you go second.
Well, look, here's the thing. So I had not seen Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey until Monday of this week. So I had some catching up to do. And my opinions were that it seemed like it was a harmless kind of one joke kind of thing, especially Excellent Adventure, which I liked more than Bogus Journey. I didn't like Bogus Journey at all. I thought Excellent Adventure was fine, but it felt like, the same joke for 90 minutes, and I think that the crux of the idea works when they are dumb kids, like when they're dumb teenagers or high schoolers or whatever. And I think that my main concern with Bill and Ted Face the Music heading into it was, what do I have any interest in watching these characters as 50-year-old men? And I feel like they may, just conceptually as characters, may age out of that. And I kind of think that happened for me. In my notes, I have, to quote Danny Glover, they're too old for this shit. So I have, I think that, I don't think that either of them are, I actually think that Alex Winter's a bit more committed. I feel like Keanu maybe forgot how to play Ted a little bit. I don't think that he was even committed with the voice of it all. Whereas I think Alex Winter was committed with the voice. It just felt like Keanu was reading the words instead of embodying Ted as much. I actually kind of disagree with the idea that this is a fresh take on the story, because the daughter's plot line is a rehash of Excellent Adventure. I mean, almost you just swap out musicians with historical figures, and that's the same thing. They're just gathering people from history through time travel. It just felt like a boring side quest thing for me. So I didn't love the daughter's storyline. And then, of course, the gimmick with Bill and Ted is that they're going back and meeting future versions of themselves. And so that led to, I guess, some amusing parts. That's the thing I would say about the Bill and Ted movies for me, is that they're amusing more than they are funny to me. So it's the kind of thing where you go, that's funny, and then but not actually laughing for me. I think that the saving grace of the movie is Anthony Carrigan as the robot, who I don't want to spoil because I think it's a really good joke. when we figure out the identity of the robot. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to let you discover that on your own. But so Anthony Carrigan is an actor who is on the show Barry on HBO, and he plays NoHo Hank, and he's by far the best part of Barry. And there's some DNA in that character in the robot that we get here, because you get a robot who's like very insecure and kind of like instantly regretting the things that he's done, and it's just a great, really funny. And for me, the only times I laughed out loud were at the robot, and then a little bit with Death, with William Sadler getting back in the saddle, back in the saddler.
That should be. I should mute you for that.
But yeah, all
Kristen Shaw was funny too, though.
Yeah, I that kind of stuff. I just again, it just felt like side quest stuff. And for me, the thing about the first two Bill and Ted movies is that Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves were never my favorite part of those movies. Like, again, Bogus Journey, I think, works on the back. Well, I don't think it works as a whole thing, but I think it's on the back of William Sadler. I mean, without that great performance of Death in Bogus Journey, it doesn't work. And so for me, I just was unamused by a lot of it. I cannot imagine. If you don't like Bill and Ted, I can't imagine you gaining fandom out of this. And I also struggle to see how I just think this is one of those franchises where if you didn't grow up with it, it just doesn't register. And again, it's like, again, this sort of the idea of lovable idiots. Sure, I guess that's fine, but I don't find them particularly funny. And for me, it just really kind of fell flat.
I mean, I obviously am I'm a little older than Jocelyn, so I was in the prime age for this stuff. The first movie came out when I was 10 or 11. I don't know. Was it 89?
89.
Yeah, so I was 11 or 10 years old. So it was like perfect. It was right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And then, it hasn't been something I've revisited often over the years, but I still think that they're kind of, I think it is fair to say that if you weren't on board then, or you weren't able to get on board later, that this movie is not going to be for you. And I think that's fair, but I think that this movie isn't meant for that. Like, this is sort of a comfort food thing more than anything. So I disagree with you, Cody. I think Bogus Journey actually works better than Excellent Adventure, because I think Bogus Journey has a little more inventiveness to it than Excellent Adventure does. Because I think the stuff with Napoleon in Excellent Adventure gets a little kind of too wacky and strange. That this one sort of blended the two, and again, like you mentioned, William Sadler as Death is great in Bogus Journey, and I think he's really good here too. He has a much smaller role when he pops up, and I think it's a great little scene. I almost played that as the clip, but I didn't want to spoil anything from the rest later in the movie. The idea, I think, that makes this so enjoyable for me is that it felt like it got right back into the groove. I don't know that Keanu is quite the same person as he was when he was Ted, because that was when he was just kind of a doofy heartthrob. Because it was that movie, and then Parenthood around the same time, and then I think Point Break was like his first kind of adult role right after that.
And I think he's worked hard to try to get beyond that. I think it took him a while to kind of remove himself from that, like, idiotic.
Right, and I mean, his name is
role.
Keanu Reeves. I mean,
Right.
He sounds like a surfer.
Yeah.
But I think Alex Winter, I was surprised, like, slid right back into it like an old glove, and it was like he actually like looked it and talked it well. I think Keanu was good. I don't think he was great. But the idea of revisiting these characters and not getting just an hour and a half of fan service is amazingly refreshing to me. Because they could have brought back the robot Bill and Ted. They could have brought back Station. They could have brought back all the other stuff that was in the movies. The only thing that really comes back is Death, and then the characters that were in the first two films. Like, the gag with Missy, the girl who was their classmate, who was like 2 years older than them, who was married to Ted's dad and Bill's dad, and then now is married to Ted's younger brother.
It is a little. I found it a little strange that the princesses were like younger women. Like they're the only people who didn't age.
I don't understand. I don't know. There must be a story behind that because those roles were recast.
Yeah,
I don't
Aaron
know who
Haynes and
it was totally unnecessary. That whole thing.
Maya
Jama
Mace. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand why. I mean, unless maybe they weren't in the biz anymore, or
sure. But why don't you recast them with like age-appropriate women? It just
I don't think Aaron Hayes is that young, and I don't think either of them are that young. I mean, they're probably a good 10 years younger than Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, but I don't think it's like casting, a 20-year-old as them, like.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess, but it seemed a little weird to me.
It was a strange choice. I don't think that's the one plot line I don't think really goes anywhere is the princess plot line, because they have like a plot line that they're traveling through time also, and I don't know that it really amounts to much of anything at all. But I did like it's Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne as Bill and Ted's children, Wilhelmina and Theodora, a.k.a. Little Bill and Little Ted from Bogus Journey. Anyway, I thought it was fine. I think that them going back to visit to put together the band of musicians from across eras. I mean, yeah, it's essentially Excellent Adventure over again, but I think this is a bookend more than, anything else. I don't think there's going to be another Bill and Ted movie after this. So this was just sort of a revisit to that formula that launched it all. And I mean, look, bottom line, it's been a shitty year, and this has been my favorite movie experience of the year so far.
Aww. And
I mean, it's fun. It's just fun. And like I was smiling right off the bat at the first scene because it with Bill and Ted at the singing at Deacon's wedding.
I was too with all their weird didgeridoo stuff.
Played by playing the theremin and throat singing. Yeah, playing with Beck Bennett in a small role as Deacon, which was a great casting choice. I mean, I just had such a great time with it, and I, for someone my age who's 41 now, I can't really if you grew up with it, I can't recommend it enough because I mean it's just, maybe in a different year, maybe in a different time, my reaction to it would have been different. It is, there's not really a bad guy in it. Like there's not really, there's no villain. It's just sort of a difference of opinion.
There's the woman who is, who they suggest that they kill Bill and Ted and replace them with someone new. That's the closest thing I get.
Well, it's Holland Taylor is like the leader, and she's also Kristen. She apparently was Rufus's wife. But the idea is that she's trying to save the universe. So it's not. I mean, I guess if you want to call that a villain,
I do.
Okay. Well, I mean, it still is. It's just a sweet movie. It's weird to say, but it's just a sweet movie.
I think that goes down to them because I had forgotten just how nice they are in such a lovable way.
Yeah.
Like it was so refreshing to just have like two guys that are being nice to each other and considerate of other people and and trying to save the world and not going about it in horrible ways.
And like the nonchalant way they just travel to the future.
Yes, and it's just so refreshing.
And meet up with death and hell and all kinds of stuff like that.
And they never do anything. They're just like very zen in their like journeys, do no harm kind of a thing, which is just so wonderful and lovely. I loved it.
Jocelyn, what's your grade?
Well, with all that said, I did really love it, but I mean, it still is not for everyone, I think. And even watching it, you are almost a little embarrassed. You're like, this is so ridiculous and so cheesy, but I would still recommend it. So I'm giving it a B-.
B-. Wow. Cody, what about you?
Yeah, not for me. unfortunately. I wanted to like it. I wanted it to be good. But for me, it's just a franchise that I just did not get in on the ground floor.
You're way too young, I think, is just the bottom line.
That's probably the case. No Primus cameo in this one, which makes it lose points.
But Dave Grohl.
Yeah, Dave Grohl. Yeah.
And Kid Cudi has a big role.
Yeah, that was funny too, Kid Cudi.
Yeah. So I give it a C+. It's not for me.
C+. Look, I'm sentimental. A-. I had such a great time watching this, but I'm maybe a sucker right now, but it was just so much fun for me. So we kind of ran the gamut there. So this is available on demand. VOD right now. I think it's also in some theaters if you really want to, but you can watch it at home, and I recommend
it's like $24.99 to rent and $30 to own.
I think it's on $19.99 somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's $19.99 and $24.99 to own. That's what it is.
Yeah. Anyway, that's available now. Let's move on to our next movie, The Personal History of David Copperfield.
Mr. Dick.
Is it lunch?
The troubling thoughts from King Charles's head. They weigh you down.
Yes, I try and keep them in order, but they do pile up and oppress me. As I die, I move from the corruptible crown to
No. Mr. Dick, we can release them. We can cast them to the wind.
I can't say that I'm feeling much better.
You have to fly it first. Come on. Kind time!
Lead on! Lead on!
Up, fly! Steady!
I can't believe it! The sky is absorbing my words!
The higher the words go,
the clearer my mind becomes. Oh, I haven't felt like this. It's as if I'm reading for the bar again. Before everything, I used to share a staircase with Tommy Traddles. He was a terrific fellow. Un camarade très formidable, as the French say. Oh, now there's the thing. I'd completely forgotten that I can speak French. This is a remarkable day.
It's a delight to see you so liberated.
Isn't that magnificent?
Beautiful.
So this is an adaptation of course, Charles Dickens' novel, David Copperfield, which also has a really long title, like The Personal Adventures.
The Personal History of David Copperfield.
No, that's
Oh, you're talking about
title.
the book.
The novel has like a really ridiculously long title.
Who cares?
It's fucking Charles Dickens, Cody. I know this is called The Personal History of David Copperfield. So, Cody, tell us about the movie and what you thought of it.
Well, like you said, it's a version of the book, and I guess the book is something that Charles Dickens wrote sort of with himself in mind, like he is a representation, or David Copperfield is a representation of Charles Dickens.
Right.
So it's a semi-autobiographical kind of thing. And notably, the movie is written and directed by Armando Iannucci, who was the creator of shows like Veep, the movie In the Loop, The Thick of It, a very smart and acerbic British writer, and I'm very sharp. And I think that the thing that stuns me the most about this movie is that it's missing that element of Iannucci's characteristics, where the movie is actually a little bit limp. I think that there's some clever dialogue in there, but it is surprisingly slapsticky for being Iannucci, and that's the first problem. I just felt like a lot of it was kind of cartoonish, and I don't know how much of this, because I'm not familiar with the book, is the book and how much of it is the adaptation here. But I think it suffers from a number of issues. I think first and foremost, it deals with I think it's meaning to be like an epic movie, but Jerrod, this is something that you complain about a lot in movies, and this is one of the biggest examples of it. It was really impossible to tell the passing of time here, because all of the characters look the same the whole way through. Even the older characters, the same hair, the same clothes. I literally could not tell you how long passes in this movie, but David Copperfield is switching locations like 5 or 6 times, And I just have no idea about how much time has passed, other than, you know, the clear points of him being a child and then him being an adult. I think that Dev Patel is really good in the movie, and I think that the movie actually does something kind of cool with a really diverse cast, where you know, like the characters, you see characters that are family members or children and stuff that are, you know, not the same race as the people that they are related to, and it's a really diverse cast. I mean, like, you know, you've got Benedict Wong in there, or not Benedict Wong. Or is it?
It is Benedict Wong.
Wong. Okay, that's what I thought. Benedict Wong, Tilda Swinton's in it. Hugh Laurie, who you see in that clip. Peter Capaldi is also in it. So it's got a great cast. I think there's this is sort of like a two-part thing of the problem, which is that at no point did I understand why David Copperfield is special in any way. And I think that in addition to that, the whole journey to him becoming a writer towards the end sort of makes no sense to me, because I don't feel like they did any legwork. Like, when they show him in his proclivities, it's like impersonating people and remembering stories and things like that. But like writing specifically, it never seems to be a thing he's interested in until like the last 20 minutes of the movie. So for me, it's just this really kind of dry, I don't know why I'm saying these words together, dry and limp adaptation of a book
we
about.
Know why.
Yeah,
we know why, Cody.
I might have given too much away. Like a really dry and limp version of a kind of like an unremarkable story, and I just felt like it was sort of DOA a little bit. And,
wait a minute, you're calling David Copperfield one of the classics of English literature a not a very good story?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why this is a remarkable story, and why the character's journey does not seem like it's different than, you know, anyone else that went through a troubled, you know, childhood of shifting homes and doing that kind of thing. I just failed to see why anyone in the movie was special, and so it just didn't connect. I didn't think it was bad.
You hear that, Charles Dickens? Cody's calling you out.
Look, I'm going to drag Charles Dickens. I don't care who hears it.
He's not reviewing the book. He's reviewing the movie.
Okay. Jocelyn, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge fan of Armando Iannucci. Veep is like one of my favorite shows. That comedy style, I just adore. In the Loop, also just when it came out, I was just in love. And I was really looking forward to this. And I was so disappointed because there isn't any strain of his DNA in this movie. It just felt like it was completely not this director's film. And I do like the elements of the diverse cast and how that's, you know, really not explained or it's just a choice that he made. But I think he was going, like Cody said, for this epic and maybe trying to veer into this fantastical area, but it just never really commits to it. So then you just kind of have an average film that tells this story that I was not interested in. And all that to say, I thought it was really boring. And there are some good performances. There's a lot of great actors. I think also Gwendolyn, I can't remember her last name, but Brienne of Tarth.
Gwendolyn Christie.
Yeah, she's also in it. She's a great villain, but she's not really utilized a lot. I think that they tried to pack too much in and didn't give enough time for, you know, these really cool performances to kind of tell the story. And also, I don't think they explained a lot. I also agree that they didn't really explain that he was on his way to becoming this great writer until the very end, like literally the last 2 minutes. And so it all just kind of fell flat for me.
I'm going to disagree with both of you. I don't think maybe you missed the sort of framing device, is that he's recalling this story, and that that can answer for a lot of things. I think is the sort of fuzziness of memory. Maybe the idea that these people don't age, is that you have a photograph of them that stays with you. That said, though, I thought it was, you know, I'm not familiar with Iannucci's work outside of this, so I have nothing to compare it to. I wouldn't expect this to be like a political, you know, sort of satire like Veep, certainly knowing that it's based on a Dickens novel. That said, I thought it was pretty, it held my attention and had some great performances. Like the Hugh Laurie clip that we showed. Hugh Laurie's great in the film. Peter Capaldi is really good too. Ben Whishaw as Uriah Heep is also very creepy. For some reason, the same actress plays his mother and love interest in the film, which was a little spooky.
Oh, I didn't notice
weird.
that.
But and Benedict Wong is really good. I mean, there's a whole lot of great performances in this. I don't know that it's it's probably too much. It's a pretty epic novel. I don't know that it's trying to be some epic retelling. I just think it's supposed to be this sort of life as told by David Copperfield, because it begins with him on stage talking.
I was just
about it.
disappointed there was no magic. That's why I was upset about.
Where do you make the Statue of Liberty disappear?
Like, that's a big part of his personal history.
Yeah, I thought that was a huge deal. No, but it's I don't know. I thought it was well done. I don't necessarily think it's as approachable as something might be. Being that it's Dickens and it's a little of its time, debtors' prisons and kids being subjected to hard labor and things like that. There is some whimsy to it that I think is fun, like the boat-shaped house and the stuff with Peter Capaldi. I think is good. It does probably veer a little too far into the personal relationships that he has with the friends.
Movie title.
No, I know it's the personal history, but I mean I don't get the friends that he had that, there's a lot of guys that are interchangeable.
Yeah.
Along the way.
Did it feel to you at all Oscar baity? Because that's how I was thinking about it for a bit of it.
I don't think so. I think it's a little too comical for that. I mean,
Really?
I think that there are some performances that might garner the attention. I think Hugh Laurie is great in the movie. I think he's my favorite part of the movie. He has a great line when they're all confronting one character at the end in an office, and he asks why another character is there. That I think is just a great dry Hugh Laurie line reading. I like Dev Patel a lot. I think the casting is interesting and fun. That it's irrespective of racial similarities from mother to son and father to daughter. It's an interesting take to have. And then of course David Copperfield being clearly of Indian descent, as Dev Patel, not having it explicitly spelled out. It's an interesting take, and I think it's fine. Yeah. I think this is probably the best Dev Patel has been since what's it, Slumdog Millionaire?
You didn't like Lion?
That's the Google Maps movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I liked it fine. I just think he's a little more magnetic here than he was in that. Have you ever seen Lion, Jocelyn?
No.
He's basically he was an orphaned boy in India, and he was separated from his brother and trying to find his way home. But he spoke a different dialect and had no idea where he was. And
it's a fun point of making fun of Kiko for it, because Kiko, former host of this podcast, it made him cry like a baby, and it's really kind of schmaltzy.
I mean, it's a good movie. I'm not gonna lie.
Sometimes those movies sneak up on you.
But it is sort of it is very schmaltzy. I mean,
The Family Stone made me a wreck. I was sobbing for hours after that dumb romantic comedy. It's with Diane, Sarah Jessica Parker, and yes, exactly.
Is that the one that was referencing The Graduate?
No. No.
One.
This is a Christmas movie with Sarah Jessica Parker where Luke Wilson brings her home to meet his family, and it has Diane Keaton. And anyway,
this is 2004, the movie, right here with this cast.
But there's a surprise in the movie, and I didn't see it coming. I wasn't expecting to.
What's the surprise? You're not going to spoil it for Cody and I.
Okay, Diane Keaton dies, and they don't really tell you that she's sick or anything. It's just the next year during Christmas, they're all gathering again, and then you slowly realize that she's not there. And I was like, what's going on? And then when I put two and two together, I was just like a mess for hours after that dumb. It's a romantic comedy, so I get that. That happens
With Luke
sometimes.
Wilson? No.
I'll never forget. I was so mad at that movie for doing that to me.
Okay, let's
Kinda like
before you start crying again.
Well, I'm glad I have a heads up for Lion, though.
Let's get to grades. Cody, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, again, like I said, I don't think it's bad. There is some clever and witty dialogue. It is very British, as you saw from that clip.
It's not as British as our next movie, though.
No, it's not, and I think we might have a fight about that one. But yes, it is not as British as the next movie. But at the end of the day, it just didn't do anything for me. I like I said, I wish that there was more of a captivating story here, and I don't think it's very captivating. So I give it a C+.
A C+. All right, Jocelyn, what about you?
It was way over sentimental for me. I think it was like kind of schmaltzy and cheesy, and I'm giving it a C.
A C, yikes.
Yeah,
I'm going to give it a B. I think it was fine. A solid B for me. A B for better watch out, Charles Dickens, because Cody's coming for you. Anyway, that is available on demand. It's not in theaters, is it?
I think you might have it backwards. I think it's in theaters and not on demand.
Oh, is it in theaters? Oh, okay. Well, it also was released like 6 months ago in the UK.
Oh, so it's out on like DVD in the UK.
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to see it, you can just order from Amazon.co.uk.
Yeah, and put it in your all-region player
that
you probably don't have. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, Get Duked.
Be careful, boys. You don't want to get lost in the Highlands. Oh, it's not safe anymore, you know. In the old days, it was better. You see, people died so young there was no time for anything bad to happen. Now there's danger everywhere. This whole area, full of rotten trapdoors and smugglers' tunnels, very easy to fall into. Or to be dragged into. Hey, you wee shit!
Nothing to do with me, sir. Big country code fan here. Here. Take one of these. Dopest beets this side of Kilmarnock. Spread the word with the other farmers, yeah?
Oh, beetroot.
DJ Beetroot.
I found it. It's a lovely crop.
No, as in BE80. Beetroot. Root of the beet. Proper clever, right? DJ Beetroot.
All right, this is a film that is it's an Amazon original. It was originally called Boys in the Wood, correct, Cody? You're muted. I'm gonna unmute you.
Yes,
sorry.
It was originally called Boys in the Wood.
Yeah, you were muted, so I had to unmute you. Yeah. Anyway, but it's now on Amazon Prime as Get Duked. Jocelyn, tell us about Get Duked and what you thought of it.
My pleasure. So, Get Duked is it's short for the Duke of Edinburgh, which is this sort of competition kind of thing, a camping competition that youth do in England every year. It's almost like a Boy Scouts of America kind of rite of passage thing. And so there's these three teenagers that are, I believe they're called like chavs in England, where they're kind of like hoodlums and they think that they're
called wankers.
They're chav.
No, I don't know.
It's chav.
Okay.
And so they're like wankers. It came out of nowhere. It was like the voice of God. But so they are having to go through this competition in the wilderness, along with a genuinely nice Boy Scout type, person that's kind of looped into their group. So they're hiking across the English countryside. Just being general, dumb teenagers, when they begin to be hunted by a character played by Eddie Izzard, who's really unrecognizable as Eddie Izzard. He's really just acting here as this murderous person who is now hunting these teenagers. So then from there, we're also joined by the Duchess, and I guess Eddie Izzard is also the Duke. There's some referencing him to the Duke of Edinburgh as well.
Right, he's kind of dressed. He kind of dressed. The Duke of Edinburgh, if you don't know, is Prince Philip.
Right.
The Queen's husband.
The Queen's husband.
Yeah.
And so
Queen's
there's
consort.
yeah.
Sorry.
There's some references to whether it's an actual person or whether, some of the local farmers also say that there's just some crazy people that are in this, countryside area. They don't really ever clarify what happens. And so I guess we just follow these kids on this kind of crazy, zany camping journey where they're being hunted. And it all leads to them, of course, surviving and learning how to work together. And what'd you say?
You're making this sound way more. You're making this sound way more wholesome, I think.
I know.
It is. This sounds like a good,
I wanted it to be. I think that's why I'm painting it in this picture.
Basically, I think the gist is Eddie Izzard and the Duchess character are eliminating dipshit from the population.
It doesn't I enjoyed it once they clarified that, but they don't.
It's
really
in the very first
explain
scene.
that until the.
No, it's in the very first scene of the movie. They talk about how what kids are taken on this camping trip, and they talk about how it's the kids who are misbehaving and things like that.
But
and
it
so
doesn't explain that that's why they're being hunted by these people until the end scene.
Well, it comes in a little. It's kind of implied,
right,
with Eddie Izzard later.
Plus, there are kids that are being purposely hunted, and the kids that are out there are the kids who are for the Duke of whatever, the Edinburgh thing. So,
but it's like a challenge that they're earning their badge for.
Right. It's like a presidential fitness test thing. But it's always the burnouts that they throw out there.
No, don't try to give it a motive. They don't explain it until the very end.
Yes, they do. They explain it very early on.
Anyway, so then I think that's really kind of the gist of the summary of the actual movie. But a huge part of it is the name of this one rapper. One of the kids is DJ Beetroot. And that's, I would say, 10% of the story is about how his name is DJ Beetroot. And I got really tired of that very quickly. And that didn't really string me along, to make me enjoy the movie. And then there's a really wacky scene kind of in the middle there, also about DJ Beetroot and the local farmers and taking psychedelics that I was not interested in.
No, ma'am. No way. No.
And then I gave it another chance. I started paying attention again, and then only to be totally disappointed because then there's this, I guess you could call it a deus ex machina, where it's just kind of something thrown in at the very last minute to kind of solve all the problems.
No, it's more of a Chekhov's gun.
It's a payoff. It's a payoff.
Okay. You're right.
It is, and it's a payoff. Cody's right.
Is it a payoff though? I wouldn't call it that. I was done with it by that point, especially after I had just given this movie a second chance.
It betrayed you.
Yeah, there's a lot to going on in this movie. There's a bread thief also that's going through. They commit a major crime in the middle of the movie or at the beginning of the movie, and I guess that's the payoff at the end. But all of it just doesn't work for me, and I didn't find it funny. And I get what it was going for, and I do understand British humor, Cody. I just don't think it was.
Cody's a chav.
Yeah.
Or a scally.
And then Jocelyn over here being a bloody yank.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think this is the best example of British humor, and something that I enjoyed at all.
All right, Cody, what about you?
Well, I think it's a great example of British humor, and I think that the movie itself, you can sort of split it up, in my opinion, into kind of two different sections, where I think for the first part of it, it's like a hangout movie. And I think when it's a hangout movie, when you're with this group of, dumb kids, is actually really funny. I wrote down a couple lines that made me laugh, like there's literally sitting on this gorgeous countryside, and I guess it's Scotland, and one of the kids says, "All this fresh air is horrible," and that line really fucking killed me. And then there's a really funny, again, another great British payoff with a kid who's armed with a fork having like a fight with Eddie Izzard with a butter knife through a window. That again, very British, very funny for me. There's a point in the movie where the kids separate, and I think when the kids separate, the movie loses a little bit of steam, especially because in the DJ Beetroot side plot, it sort of turns into like a 15-minute music video. And the director is known for music. They're a music video director, so it makes a lot of sense. But it sort of gets sort of like psychedelic at that point, and that's, I think, where it loses me a little bit. I do think I do like the bumbling. There's also a bumbling cops element of it that I think is quite funny at times. Maybe not my favorite part of the movie, but certainly something that I think works for the most part. The scene at the end that sort is, the payoff to everything, I think is fine. I don't know that any sort of statement it's trying to make about generational gaps or the young and the old and things like that. I don't know that those pay off in any kind of way. But again, I think that when it's these kids hanging out and just being sarcastic and dumb and stuff like that, I think it's really enjoyable. And to me, what I walked away thinking was that this is like diet Edgar Wright. Like it's very influenced by Edgar Wright. I think especially early on, it has a lot of like Shaun of the Dead, like framing compositions and that kind of thing. So I think it's very British, at times very funny, but it sort of dips in the middle quite a bit, I think.
For my part, I actually like the second half better. And look, these type of characters, these chavs, as Jocelyn called them, they're my least favorite movie characters because I just like it's all
you're a
like,
goody and you just can't relate.
No, it's just that they're like I don't get that humor in, like, I don't find it. Like, I find them grating. Maybe because I have PTSD from Eggsy in the Kingsman movies, because I fucking hate that character. And that he's sort of this chav guy in trainers.
I love that you're using that so much.
I don't.
Oh, it's going to stick around. No, I think that these guys started grating on me at first. Then when it kind of became clear that they were bumbling idiots and just sort of not in touch with the real world, it really improved for me. And I think that the scene that we showed where they kind of encounter a farmer along the way, because the idea is that they're supposed to find their way across the Scottish Highlands to these different goals, one being a campsite, another one being the coast, to earn this certificate, and they don't know where they're at, and they meet up with this farmer, and he kind of encounters the DJ Beetroot character, who's just this ridiculous sort of
it's one of the funniest things in the movie, because all of his raps are about his penis.
Yeah.
And then the name of his album is Cocktails, which again made me laugh.
And that part made me laugh a lot. And I think that the payoff that that we talked about, and that Jocelyn chided for its plot convenience, I think is really funny. And I think it's almost like a Monty Python style funny.
I can see that. You're almost convincing me. I like looking at it in that respect, as far as like a Monty Python kind of gag.
The one thing I don't think really works is the cops. I think that's sort of is an empty part of the movie that I don't really. I didn't really find funny or particularly interesting.
Yeah, I enjoyed the board of stuff that they were doing, like the visual joke of like that when they were like adding words to
like
to
zombies and terrorists. Yeah, no,
pedophile.
I mean that's
pedophile.
That's
excuse me.
Pedophile, with the aegis in it. They.
I don't like British Jerrod.
That's how they
I'm just
spell
gonna
it.
on the record
That's how
here.
they spell it. Oh well, motherfucker, it's coming.
Get ready.
You see like the cops, like. Here's the thing, like, I can take the kids being idiots, but when you have the cops being idiots also, then it's a little much. Like, there should only be like one set of idiots in the film, I think, is the problem. Like, you can't do like a whole office cast full of Michael Scotts, you know? Like, you can't do that. And you can't have that and it be successful, because you need, like, the idiots. Like, the cops should have been the straight men, and, you know, that they think they're hunting down terrorists and drug addicts and all this other stuff. It just isn't funny.
They needed some editing, I think.
I just don't think the cop stuff is funny. I think it's the one whiff of this. And I actually ended up liking this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to, based on the first 10 minutes of it. I think it has an interesting payoff. I think Eddie Izzard is funny throughout it, sort of droll, and there's some confusion. Like, I don't really understand what happens after the big sort of rap scene. Like, it just kind of cuts to the next day. But overall, I enjoyed it a fair amount more than I thought I was going to. Grades, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I saw a review where they said they didn't find it funny or...
Didn't find it cheeky.
Or like frightening.
Is Cody gonna leave?
It's supposed to be kind of scary also. So,
is it?
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be kind of like verging on horror a little as well.
I don't think so at all.
Well, because I think...
Oh no!
They didn't accomplish that. It wasn't very frightening. It wasn't very funny. And I will say there was some good performances. There were a few things that I did laugh at, but I think all around I was the opposite. I was like watching it at the beginning, thinking, "Oh, this isn't as bad as I was expecting it to be," and then it just kind of went off the cliff for me. So I'm giving it a C-.
C-. Cody, what about you?
Yeah, well, I enjoy and understand British humor as an intellectual, and so I just want to say that. I think that there are elements of it that work better than others. Again, like I said, it turns into a music video a couple of times, and I wish that it didn't do that as much as it does. That being said, I think it's pretty funny. I was finding myself laughing throughout. And I think that the kids in it are really good, and I don't think that they're unlikable kids either. I think they're just, again, harmless idiots, right. And I think that endears them quite a bit. One character does something a little bit questionable, of course, but he's also the one who's like dumping dry soup mix into his mouth and stuff throughout the movie. So again, it's just harmless idiots, and I enjoyed it. So B- for me.
I'm gonna give it a B. I enjoyed it far more than I ever expected to, and I think it feels a little nasty at first, like mean-spirited, and I think it redeems itself by the end. You know, the character that you mentioned who does something pretty outrageous at first is redeemed by the end when you figure out what exactly happened. So B for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, Jocelyn. It's over now. You don't have to think about this movie that you hate so much anymore.
All right. It's available right now on Amazon Prime for free. So go watch it now. Okay, let's move on to our next movie, Class Action Park.
There's nothing in the world like Action Park. Baby, let me take you to Action Park. Action Park.
The story of Action Park is a true crime story.
As you entered the park, you saw this thing, and you're like, this is real.
The engineering behind this, if there was any engineering, was just nuts.
Build it higher, make it faster. People control the action.
Combine that with liquor and anything goes.
There were no rules. For a lot of kids, that was heaven. And if you couldn't swim well, yikes.
I don't think you can understand a place like Action Park if you don't understand the kind of minds that build it.
A lot of people wish they could ignore rules. Gene actually did that. Nobody would give him insurance, so he created his own insurance company and then insured himself.
It did bring sometimes a criminal element.
I don't know how many people died at Action Park, but it wasn't just one person.
Electrocuted.
Decapitated.
Fractured vertebrae.
Impaled on the bowl.
Had a heart attack.
Nobody should ever be the second person to die in a wave pool. Close the wave pool.
So this is a documentary about a notorious... is it New Jersey or New York?
Jersey.
New Jersey theme park, Action Park, as you can see in the clip there. That was sort of a lawless land of shady rides and business people. This is an HBO Max documentary. Cody, tell us about Class Action Park and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so it's like you said, it's a documentary on Action Park, which was an extremely dangerous, as you saw in the clip, amusement park. And right off the bat, the movie sort of frames it in like a really interesting, like VHS visuals type of look that I think is really cool. And essentially, what you see is it tells a little bit about Gene Mulvihill, who's the guy who owned the park. And how the park was set up and then how it operated. And it sort of has a narrative device of like a park tour a little bit, where it kind of goes around to each individual super dangerous ride and has people, the interview subjects were, famous people who are park guests, and then also former park employees kind of just talking about it. And, how can I put this? It has a really difficult task of balancing the holy shit absurdity with like the real dangers of it, which I'll get back to in a minute. But, the parts that are holy shit dangerous are really entertaining, I think, to listen to. They show how, there's, you can see that loop ride. I think it was called...
Go ahead, sorry.
I think it's called Cannonball Loop, right?
I believe so. That's the famous one, that it's a water slide that actually has a loop in it.
Yeah, and they kind of showed how it was designed with like no integrity, and how they would test it is that Gene, the owner, would give the employees $100 to test and go through it, and then of course people would come out all fucked up and bloody. And
there's a great story about that with there's like people were losing teeth in there.
Yeah.
And then other people were coming out with cuts because the teeth was embedded in the foam.
Yes.
It's so fucking crazy.
It's crazy. And it has it uses like some really great animations. I really like the animation in this movie to kind of illustrate the dangers of the park and things like that, because they show like the teeth in the padding and stuff like that. And I think that the talking head interviews are all really entertaining. I think the star of the movie is Chris Gethard, who is a comedian. He used to have a show on True TV. He's been in movies and stuff. And he grew up in, I believe, New Jersey, and was a frequent park guest, and kind of talks about it in a really funny way. I enjoyed hearing him talk about stuff like there was this one that was like that like you went down on rollers, like it looked like a hot dog rollers. And he just had this really funny line about how he never went on it because he didn't want to catch his feet or balls in the roller. It was just a very funny line that I noted. And I really like, again, the park tour element. So there was a water park, and there was also like what would you call it? Like a go-kart type park as well.
It was a motor
park. And that's when the movie sort of takes a turn a little bit, where it starts talking about... There was one ride there. I didn't write down the name of it, but it was essentially like you were on. It was like this concrete.
It's an alpine slide.
The alpine slide, where a lot of that's where the first person who I believe died was there, and that's when the movie starts to get into this delicate act of like really laughing at the insanity of it all, and juxtaposing it with the real dangers that were there, and you get into some. Honestly, I believe to be very shocking bits of information that roll out. The idea that you see in there that Gene Mulvihill did not have insurance, and it gets into the complexities of him, drawing out court dates so that people would let the lawsuits go away. The Class Action Park purchased its own ambulance. Like, that's how bad and how often people were getting hurt at this place. And I think that it does, for the most part, a pretty decent job of balancing the idea between... let's kind of laugh at how crazy this was, and let's kind of show how dangerous it was, and people died and people were getting injured by the hundreds. Where I think it missteps just a little bit is its treatment by the end of the movie of Gene, which is that there seems to be some sort of redemptive quality to him that some of the people talk about him being a very like ballsy genius type of character. Specifically there's a woman who was an editor of a newspaper who like got to know him as an older person, but it's sort of in like it kind of, especially in the Chris Gethard closing bit, he kind of talks about how, well, yeah, it was fucked up, but if you don't like it, then fuck you. And that was kind of like the coda of the movie, which I thought was a little bit weird. And I think they kind of let this maniac off the hook just a little bit. And maybe did not, like I said, I think that there's a little bit of maybe letting him off the hook a little bit for the pure negligence of it all. That said, I think it's a pretty fascinating and interesting story. I think that everyone that's interviewed has a lot of personality, and I found the talking head interviews really enjoyable. And it's just, fucking crazy, man. It's this park in which people were getting gravely injured that nobody just seemed to care. It's like a very Wild West kind of environment. So all in all, I had a really good time with it.
Jocelyn, what about you?
So I don't agree that it was balanced necessarily. I think that they got to the serious elements and the actual deaths way too late, and then kind of rushed through those in the last 30 minutes, where the first half or the first hour, more than half of the movie, they're kind of going through almost like a Wikipedia page of all the things that happened and all the crazy stories. Using these cartoons and these talking head interviews. I wasn't a huge fan of the cartoons, and I wasn't also a huge fan of the talking head interviews, just because my bullshit radar kept kind of dinging, where it's like we're listening to the the telling of these stories from people who were children, and they just seemed to be hyperbole for me, and I kept thinking, like, okay, I'm sure there's an ounce of honesty or credibility to this story, but then it just seems a little sensational. So my, like I said, my bullshit radar kind of peaking a little, where I'm like, I'm enjoying hearing that, this place was really out there and crazy, but then it would just go a little too far, where they were saying, like, they had to paint the bottom of the pools because they couldn't see people, and the wave pool was full of gore, and it's like, really? I mean, maybe it's because I'm a former reporter, but those things happen at all parks like this.
I 100% agree with you. Like, this is not a unique phenomenon.
I was also a lifeguard, and I think both of those kind of life roles kind of made me more skeptical about the things that they were saying. And also just knowing that there's plenty of theme parks, in Texas, in this area that had very similar instances that happened. So all that to say, I thought it was interesting. It wasn't my favorite documentary.
Yeah. So I have a thing for these theme park stories, and I'm a big fan of it. I've heard the stories of Action Park, and I've watched videos about it and read about it. Of course, the big thing is the looped slide that kind of doesn't, was not designed with any sort of engineering expertise involved. That said, I don't know that really many other water parks are, like you said, Jocelyn. It reminds me, you both remember the story of the Schlitterbahn in Kansas City in 2016, where the boy was decapitated on the ride, the Verrückt, and that slide was just designed, like, they just designed it. Like, they didn't, consult any engineering firms. It's not like a roller coaster where you have to understand, like, the gravity and physics of it. Like, they just made a slide, and that's really kind of how this stuff goes, is that I don't know that there's a lot of regulation in it. I don't know that it's anything that is out of the ordinary. Obviously, the criminal element in this, and the idea that this guy would sort of pass the buck on insurance. He insured himself basically, and then would make these trials undesirable for any lawyer to take up for the families of people that were injured. That's awful, obviously, but again, I don't know that it's unique in this industry. And I think that we're kind of all spoiled by the idea that, theme parks are run by these giant corporations now, like, Disney and Six Flags and Cedar Fair now, that, they can't afford to have something like that happen. But these little shitholes like this, I mean, yeah, of course. Even Schlitterbahn was a local company until 2 years ago when they were bought by Cedar Fair, and obviously they designed something that killed a kid. It was obviously dangerous and had been before. It wasn't some sort of freak accident. I mean,
the Rattler here, that's a Six Flags theme park. They had tons of lawsuits because it was a wooden roller coaster, and they had to make the first drop less severe.
Right. I mean,
because
it's
of all
not
the lawsuits.
Right. It's not exactly something that is, it's not really. There is, I guess, some science in some of it, but it's not something that's. I think this movie mentioned it. The idea is that you think you're going to die, but you don't. And that's the point of a thrill ride. But these rides, some of them were genuinely dangerous, like the Alpine slide.
Right.
But that's not the first Alpine slide that's ever existed. That's the thing.
Well, the other thing, though, was that this was kind of one of the first American water parks, though. Like this is like, so it's like it's unique in the fact that it was, one of the first out of the gate, but also, ostensibly run by children or teenagers,
But have you ever been to Schlitterbahn? Like, that's who works there. Like,
right. I understand that piece, but like the element of, again, not having insurance or, owning your own ambulance and things like that. I think that escalates it to a point where it was a time before regulations were even thought of. So now, of course, you can look back on these things and say, well, actually what I mean is that currently, like you said, they might be seen by big corporations, but I feel like even the shittiest little water park probably has insurance.
Sure, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, who knows? I think the idea is probably to not. I mean, even big insurance companies don't want to pay claims, so I don't know. I just don't think. I think this thing has a legend, which is probably the only reason this documentary was made. Sadly, I don't think it's unique. It's got that sort of mystique around it because it's been so ingrained in pop culture. But there were probably 10 or 12 other just as shitty places that have since gone under or have morphed into something that's more, safer, let's say. Because you look at rides like the Alpine slide, like that's a real thing that was elsewhere. Like they didn't invent the Alpine slide.
But I don't think they ever claimed to, though. But I find it weird that the criticism of this is that other things exist, as if the telling of one specific thing as a larger part of things can't be done.
For me, it was about how they told it. It just reeked of kind of like one element of truth and then a lot of kind of grandiose.
Well,
I don't. That's backed up by statistics.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Jocelyn, on that. But I do think it may be. I don't know that they're necessarily not telling you the truth, but it is interesting that most of the stories come from people that were children at the time, and I do.
Well, and the first-hand accounts were all like, "Oh, it was a slide that would drop us 10 feet in the air." It's like, yeah, that's a slide, like, oh, the Tarzan one where people would get shocked by the cold water, and it's like.
Sure.
That's so they would tell these like personal accounts that were very minute, hoping to give credibility to the big things that they heard or that people have said secondhand. Do you see what I mean? It's like almost like the firsthand knowledge was very, very insignificant, and then it almost was trying to paint the more significant things as credible.
So I think there's two separate sides to this. There's the idea that there was fraud and an attempt to sort of pass the buck on responsibility, that being forming his own insurance company and not paying claims and basically dragging these things out. And then I think there's the other part of the story, which is paired with that, there's the obvious craziness and incompetence of something like the Cannonball Loop that was never going to work, but the other stuff just sounds like 1980s water park stuff, dropping into a spring-fed water, like it's cold,
right?
I don't know that part really stands out much. Obviously the fraud and the death that came of it is a tragedy and is part of this story. But I don't know that it's enough to hold the movie together other than saying that this was like a crazy 80s water park.
Like wave pools. Wave pools are notoriously deadly. Like there's, I'm sure there's statistics about those.
And they're notoriously gross. They're my brother got sick. We got dysentery from a wave pool.
Oh, no.
I mean, if you looked at like Splashtown in the 80s, there in San Antonio, like it was probably a shit show also.
Not a deadly one, at least, but
sure. But I mean, it was, it's in the middle of summer on the side of a highway. You can take the fucking bus to the water park. It's probably not going to be run. It's probably going to be run by 18-year-olds who are supervising 15-year-olds. So it's not really. I don't think
steady stream of used diapers that were inside of
Good Lord.
Splashtown.
I just don't think it's a unique enough take on what it is. It's only notorious because so many people have talked about it. I just feel like there's others. I mean, shit, the Schlitterbahn thing only happened 4 years ago.
I know.
I mean, it wasn't something that was confined to this park for sure.
I thought of that incident a lot during this movie.
Yeah. Anyway, grades, Cody.
Yeah, to me, there doesn't need to be that unique nature, and I think that in a vacuum, this exists as a story about this particular water park. So saying that there were other things like it, I don't really, that doesn't bother me at all, because it's the telling of this particular water park through the eyes of some people who I think are interesting characters and interesting narrators through it. So because the people were entertaining, I found myself really enjoying it. So I give it a B.
Jocelyn, what about you?
Yeah, I just don't think it lived up to the hype for me. I thought that I was going to be hearing more like shocking and really insane elements to this. But I think I already really knew most of the really shocking and surprising things. And I just as a documentary, I wasn't a big fan of how it was put together. So I'm going to give it a C.
C. I'm going to give it a B-. I think it tells enough of a good story. I do think it's a little too in its own bubble to really kind of appreciate the fact that it's not unique. And I do think that's an issue personally. I mean, I get that they're telling the story about this park, but I think it could have been a little more, a little less enamored with its own story. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, You Cannot Kill David Arquette.
Legends of Wrestling, one of the biggest events of the year. 10,000 fans in attendance as Ken Anderson takes on David Arquette.
David Arquette as the wrestler sucks. I don't give a shit about David Arquette.
It's the biggest disgrace in professional wrestling history.
David Arquette what's going on here?
An untrained Hollywood actor wins most prestigious championship.
His involvement in wrestling really hurt his career.
10 years of rejection, that's crazy. I want to clear my name and, through the process, honor wrestling.
This ain't the movies. We don't have stunt doubles.
I'd like to announce my return to professional wrestling.
Did I wrestle again? What are your thoughts?
So this is a documentary about, of course, actor David Arquette, who, if you don't know, sort of won a stunt championship in the WCW 20 years ago as part of
surrounding one of my favorite movies as a kid.
As a part of a promotional event for Ready to Rumble. This is a documentary about his return to wrestling. Jocelyn, tell us about the movie and what you thought of it.
Yeah, sure. So the beginning, we are introduced to David Arquette, although we already know, I'm sure most people know him, but we are introduced to a version of David Arquette who's really kind of down on his luck. He's, 50 pounds overweight, his wife says. He's auditioning and not getting any roles. He says that he's been auditioning for 10 years and hasn't been getting roles. And
which I don't think is true.
I know. It's just because then they said he was working on a movie later in the movie. But anyway,
I wonder if that movie, by the way, that's mentioned
was
is
Spree.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
I don't know.
I didn't even think of that. That's funny. Yeah. So he's really kind of just sort of a sad version of himself. There's a lot of, talking about his mental stability. He goes to see a lot of doctors and has some really crazy treatments. and you really feel sorry for him. So then that kind of leads you into this idea that he wants to kind of redeem himself in the wrestling world. And he has sort of started to say that is what's going to kind of turn his life around, that if he can get the respect of the wrestling world, which he had lost, as you mentioned, when they gave him the championship as a sort of joke and made him a joke, that he will somehow become a better person and it's going to change his life. And so you're taken on this journey with him, and you really do see him kind of turn around. Like, he gets into shape. He starts from the bottom. I mean, he goes to these like crazy backyard wrestling places in Richmond, and he even says, like, it sounds super shady, and he's driving around with a guy in a van, and you're just like worried about his safety. And then it really does show him kind of coming back from that, from this backyard wrestling places. He kind of maneuvers into some more credible fights. One part of the movie is he goes down to Tijuana to wrestle with the luchadoras. And that's a big chunk of the movie, and a part that I really enjoyed watching.
The street wrestling was something. I've been to Mexico many times, and I've never seen street wrestling.
How
that was
crazy
actually
was
pretty
that?
interesting.
I was like, that is so smart, and to see him doing that with these guys was so endearing. So that's another kind of element of the movie that I really enjoyed, was getting to know him a little more. He definitely already has this persona of being kind of out there, but you really get to see kind of what he's like. All culminating with him doing this death match that was really intense. And I forgot to say that also kind of his health is a big part of the storyline, because he is, close to 50. He had a heart attack like a year before he decided to do this. And you really are taken on this journey with him. And by the end, I think he really does redeem himself. And from where it started as feeling like that you were just pitying him, I think it really did a great job of like kind of coming full circle and showing that he kind of did what he set out to accomplish.
Cody, what about you?
Well, I'm not someone who watches wrestling, but I am strangely fascinated by wrestling culture. And if that I don't know if that makes sense, but one of my favorite shows on TV right now is this show Dark Side of the Ring, which is a show on Vice, which shows like the super darkest, like the darkest shit you could ever imagine that happens, like the real life dark stuff that happens in wrestling. Like, there's episodes about Chris Benoit, there's episodes about when Owen Hart fell and died. There's a lot of
right.
Like there's a Jimmy Snuka episode that's nuts. And one thing I've learned through reading about this stuff is that, like, yes, it is inherently fake, and I'm sort of doing some pre-prep because I have a feeling I know what Jared's going to think about this. But there are certain elements of it that are very real, in that these indie guys who are in these small circuit places will really truly beat the shit out of you to try to make a name for themselves. And that's a very real thing that happens, where you step into the ring and there are certain people who take it way too seriously. And there's a scene in question where David Arquette goes into a backyard wrestling thing that he doesn't get paid for, and it's part of this, the only convention that will invite him, and he gets the shit beat out of him. And I think that all of that is very real, and I think that he doesn't see it coming at all. And so I think that what?
I just profoundly disagree with everything.
You don't think that, like, what do you think was happening there? Like, you can see him really get hit. And there's a scene
look, I will never say that that wrestling is fake in the way that these guys aren't getting hurt and they aren't getting physically punished. I'm not that naive. I know that part is real. Everything else, I have 100%. I don't buy into it at all. I think it's all a work. Everything else.
Yeah, and I just don't. You should watch Dark Side of the Ring because it shows that very much that is not the case. But I think the things that it shows that are interesting is sort of this. It is sort of like a comeback story in a lot of different ways, and I think that there's a lot of charm to this sort of comeback story he has. There's a moment in the movie. There's several moments in the movie where I'm like, okay, this is clearly a work of some kind. There's when he goes, there's a really interesting segment. Well, I mean, not interesting, but interesting in the way that it feels real fake, of like him going to visit Diamond Dallas Page to do yoga for a minute. Like that was clearly like a contractual obligation or something.
There were plenty of others too.
Yeah, well, okay, but I think the interesting thing is that I feel like David Arquette's passion for wrestling, knowing what it is, he doesn't think that it's a real thing. He knows the pageantry of it all.
I think we're all past that, though. I think as a culture, we've all gotten past that. We all know that it's not real. Like they don't even look. I had the chance to interview Hulk Hogan several years ago. Not bragging, but like they would get very, very mad if you said it was fake, which is 100% fine. They would concede and tell you that the outcomes are scripted, but they would vehemently deny that it's fake, and that's fine. And I 100% think that the world is past that now. There's not anyone who thinks that everything that's happening dramatically is real, and I think that's where I'm losing it. But go ahead.
Well, but that's the thing is that David Arquette's passion for wrestling is not rooted in some storyline. It's rooted in, this is something that he's loved since he was young. Sure. And I think that's the thing that really grips you about the movie is that this is a guy who is super passionate about something, who is in somewhat advanced years with health problems, with very clear other issues, which I'll get into in a second, who is chasing a dream, and it's really as simple as that. I mean, David Arquette is not at the status where he could just go be on TV as a wrestler at any point. Like he's actually working himself up through the indie circuits. Like he's putting in the work for it. And work being whatever you make of it, but like truly going through those shitty gigs where he's, performing and wrestling in a backyard for 12 people or whatever. So, I think that that's the great part about it. I think that and again, he gets the shit beat out of him. I mean, like there's a scene towards the end of the movie where he gets stabbed in the neck. Like, I mean, that's very real. What happens there is that he walks into that, he goes to like Luke Perry takes him to the hospital in that.
Did you see it? It wasn't that he got stabbed in the neck. It was like he got like a bulge of a blood vessel, and then at the hospital they cut it, and then he started bleeding out. Right. Did you see that? It was like a bubble that he then put his hand on.
Anyway,
left the ring. Oh my god, that was crazy.
But again, it's an example of again walking into the things that I believe are that there are indie guys on the circuits who are trying to make a name for themselves, who will do something like that. That's dangerous. Look, I went to. Last year, I went to an indie wrestling match at 502 Bar, which is the weirdest venue for that. But my friends dragged me to it, and I was morbidly curious. And I was standing like 2 feet away from the ring. And like, and I think that kind of opened my eyes to a lot of like the actual like pain that goes into that. Seeing how hard those people were actually getting hit. Like, yes, they're designed to take bumps and to make it safer, but this was one of those shitty little indie things where like they were like someone got slammed with a door, and then a shard of the door came flying out and hit the camera guy in the eye, and he was bleeding. It was feet away from me. Like there's inherent danger, and I think that the difference is on the WWE level, that's like national wrestling. Those sort of dangers are not there, but on the circuits that David Arquette is doing, where it's guys fighting to do the craziest shit possible to try to make a name for themselves, that kind of stuff is there. And so I think that's the element that really connects to me. If this was David Arquette trying to be like a WWE wrestler, I wouldn't really care about it. But the fact that he's trying to work himself through the indie circuits, I think makes it a really impressive for me. And I think the one thing that it sort of leaves on the table, and this is my two big complaints. One is that I think that it doesn't. It has a weird passage of time type thing where you can't quite tell when something is happening. Like in one scene, he'll be like kind of big and bloated, and then another scene he'll be, super in shape, and then he'll go back to be big. And like I think it's edited a little poorly in that sense. The other thing is, I think it leaves a lot on the table in terms of some real demons that David Arquette is fighting. And I think maybe he's not entirely okay in a couple ways.
I don't think anyone in the Arquette family has been traditional. I mean, they've had a lot of tragedy.
Right.
And sort of mental issues. So I think it's, their dad was basically was it their dad or their grandfather that was like a carnival worker thing?
I think it was like maybe it was their dad.
That's what he was saying. He was like, I'm a carny at heart.
Yeah. And, Alexis Arquette, the sister, famously kind of had a lot of troubles before she died. And
and I think that there's a hint towards some darkness there, but also, like, he just doesn't seem all the way there. They show him getting ketamine treatment where he kind of flips out a little bit. And it also hints towards some real bad alcoholism problems that they don't really touch on. And I was a little bit disappointed that they show him, like really drunk at a strip club or whatever, but they don't ever follow through on those types of demons that he's facing. All in all, though, I found myself pretty charmed by it.
Okay, so I want to make it very, very clear that the physicality of any of this stuff, and that's for some reason you seem to be getting hung up on that, Cody. The physicality of this stuff, I'm never questioning. I'm not questioning that David Arquette has gone out there and hurt himself and gone out there and done some crazy shit. I just think that the whole storyline. Look, the story that got him the professional wrestling title or whatever in WCW 20 years ago was part of the promotion of a film from the studio Warner Brothers, who owned the wrestling league WCW, who owned the entire thing. It was a Turner thing through and through, and yeah, it was a promotional thing. And sure, if it pissed wrestling fans off, fine. But all this talk about disrespecting the fans and shit, this is the fucking... They literally show, right after that, they show Donald fucking Trump fighting with Vince McMahon. Like, Jay Leno wrestled in fucking WWE once.
WCW.
Was it WCW? Mm-hmm. I don't fucking care. Either way.
Well, see, Kevin Eubanks was on the side, and Eubanks snuck in at the last minute, did a diamond cutter.
So
on Eric Bischoff.
Look, man, this thing has been bullshit from the beginning, which storyline wise has been bullshit from the beginning, and it's fine. It's a play that they make the analogy in this movie that it'd be like if you played the king in a high school play and took the crown home and thought that you were the king. Like, no, that's a fucking stupid analogy because it's all fake. Like, it's storyline wise, it's all fake. Like, you see literally the guy RJ City, who's a indie wrestler. You see them plan out the whole thing. You see them plan every hit that happens, and you see that because that's what happens. Like, you watch, I don't know if you ever watched the Andre the Giant documentary. I think we talked about it, didn't we? On HBO?
I don't think so.
Anyway, maybe we didn't. But you can, if you listen, you can hear Andre the Giant calling out moves.
Nobody's arguing that.
Then what the fuck are you arguing? Because I'm not arguing that the idea that they're not getting hurt is there.
Because he's getting into places where he had to get to that level to where they would respect him enough to talk through that shit.
No, they didn't. They would have David Arquette. Any indie wrestling league would have David Arquette in a heartbeat. A fucking heartbeat. This is a guy who, despite what he says, has 20 feature film credits from the last 10 years, has been on TV shows, is in the public consciousness in the Scream movies for a certain generation of people. So there's no reason he had to go to this backyard wrestling. It's all fucking fake.
But the storyline of it, that's the storyline.
No, that's fake. This is all fake. This is all a job.
That is not the thing that I connect with. Okay, so the idea is that even if David Arquette planned out this idea of, okay, well then stab me in the back with all of this stuff and then make me bleed everywhere.
I'm not saying he planned that part out, but I'm saying
I'm conceding the fact that even if that was the case, that doesn't change the fact that David Arquette, the actor, the millionaire, is going out to these shithole wrestling things to try to chase a dream. Like that is an authentic thing, whether or not the content of the matches is irrelevant to the whole thing, because he's putting his body at line for the work.
This is all a work because it's the plan.
You think his passion?
Along.
You think his passion through all of this is a work?
No. Listen to what I'm saying. He's a 100% a wrestling fan. The storyline that he has to redeem himself for this WCW thing that was clearly a promotional event in a league that was built by a fucking media company is bullshit. I mean, sure, there are some fans that are probably pissed off about it. They call it the darkest moment in wrestling history, whatever. But the idea that he has to work his way back up through backyard wrestling, no. David Arquette could go be on, maybe WWE wouldn't take him. I don't know. They probably would, but there's no reason he has to start in someone's backyard. He's doing it for the story. He's doing it for this film.
I completely disagree.
100%. This is 100% all a work. It's 100%.
I am right in the middle between both of you.
I mean, I'm not discounting the fact that he's getting hurt. I'm not discounting the fact that he's passionate about it. I'm saying that he's in the fucking van that guy is in. Like, come on, man. Like, he's in Uncle Rico. He's in Uncle Rico's van from Napoleon Dynamite.
You don't think that there's people like that exist who are wrestlers who are...
He looks like fucking Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler in that van. Like, it's literally...
Devil's advocate here. What if that is his brain is different? Like, obviously, he's...
I don't have...
Do you think that to him, it meant to him to go and do this?
I don't
Do you
think
see what I mean?
I don't think it's anything he had to do. I think it's something he wanted to do.
Exactly.
Because he wanted to quote unquote prove himself. Fine, which is fine. He wanted to go be with these like low budget, really indie wrestling people. That's totally fine. Did he need to? 100% no. 100% no. I mean, he's a millionaire. He's like, he got fucking Courtney Cox, his ex-wife, to be in this documentary. He has a Courtney Cox clone for a wife. His best friend was Luke Perry, which was a genuinely sad moment in the movie. I know. I'm fine with it. I just can't buy this as anything other than just a fake documentary.
Isn't it almost like a metaphor for wrestling, the documentary being... Sure. So in that way, I kind of like it, that it's almost like, yes, it is perhaps fake, but it's almost like a theatrical version of an underdog story.
Sure. And none of this is taking away...
Does that make...
None of this means I don't like it, by the way. I just think that it's...
This would be a long road to liking the movie, ultimately.
I mean, it's fine for what it is. I think it's a little too... it doesn't commit the same sins as what we were talking about before when we were discussing the Amazing Jonathan documentary that we reviewed, where that one was like audibly trying to create a storyline. This one, I think, is just sort of it's a vanity project is what it is. And I think it's fine for that. I just don't think that any of this is something he had to do. It's something he wanted to do. And I'm fine with that. But to think that he had to work his way back up, that storyline is bullshit. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that he could call up WWE and be on there the next day. I really don't think that. Especially because he's been working through the wrestling circuits for, 2 or 3 years now, or however long it's been, and he's not on AEW, he's not on WWE. He's been wrestling as a legitimate wrestler for several years now and has not ascended the ranks even without the documentary or anything like that. So, I don't think it's all bullshit. I think there is a certain amount of bullshit in the movie. I'm 100% sure of that. But I attach myself to the stuff that again, as an underdog story, as someone who
I don't even think it's an underdog story though.
It's almost like reality TV where the situations are fabricated, but the moments are genuine.
Look,
sure, I could even concede that. I think that it's the tale of it is charming.
I think it's he's a legit wrestling fan who feels like he was legitimately...
You're gonna get so much wrestling hate mail after this.
I don't have a problem with wrestling. I have a picture of me with Hulk Hogan giving a thumbs up. So,
so he's good.
I'm good. I'm
get out of jail
I'm solid.
Free pass.
I think he's a wrestling fan who wanted to prove himself, and I think that's fine. But to think that any of this was necessary is misguided. Anyway, grades, Jocelyn.
Oh, wow. Yeah. After all that, I think I am
Mom and Dad are arguing. It's okay. Where everything's going to be okay.
I love it. It was so nice.
Cody's such a mark for these things.
I know. It's just I never know what y'all are gonna like completely go opposite on, and it's always fun and surprising. But I think I fall somewhere in between where I wasn't under the impression that this was like a completely unfabricated storyline. I think that there was a lot of almost like wrestling, like planning of this, but that doesn't mean that there weren't some really genuine moments and that I didn't love watching him and learning more about him. And I ended up really loving this movie. I'm giving it a B+.
Cody, what about you?
Yeah, I think that any parts that are fabricated don't ultimately end up impacting. I think the real core of what the movie's supposed to be about. So I can concede details. I'm sure that there's plenty that's fabricated, but to me, the story itself at its core is a guy who's in his the later stages of his career trying to reinvent himself and doing so in a way that's causing him bodily harm. And yes, a choice, sure, but that doesn't make. He's doing it, so why not root for the guy? So I give it a real solid B.
You are they've got that residual ready to rumble love, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
How big of a movie was that for you as a kid?
Oh my God, I owned the DVD and watched it every night.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's so
you were like Oliver Platt, yay!
Oliver Platt is
Scott
the big
Conn,
wrestling.
Scott Conn.
Yeah.
I said a lot of words about this that may sound like it's bad. I think it's fine. It's if you don't take it too seriously, I think it's interesting enough. There are some genuine moments. I think the Luke Perry stuff is probably the most kind of gut punch thing in the whole thing, because it's sort of like you don't realize Luke Perry's there until they talk about him being the guy that took him to the hospital in that scene where you see it really urgent, him bleeding from his neck, and it's a genuine sad moment. But a B-.
Yeah, and his son too is
that was
a really
cool
good wrestler
too.
Yeah.
So they basically probably met at Buffy, right?
Was he in the Buffy movie?
Yeah, he was
I
the
don't
best
remember
friend, like the original Buffy movie. I think that's where they met.
Was he? Oh yeah, he was. I forgot about that. Yeah,
Like,
probably.
just a
I mean,
little thing.
yeah. Anyway, all right, that's gonna do it for this
You didn't
week.
give your grade.
I did. I said a B-.
Did he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was still tuning you out. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry, Cody. I had a heel turn there, so.
You know what, Jerrod? We're gonna settle this cage match
Oh, please.
In the squared circle.
in the squared circle.
Oh.
No tap outs. You have to pin.
Can we do a Hell in the Cell?
We can do Hell in the Cell. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what that means, but.
I don't either. It sounded
Okay.
good.
That's going to do it for this week. Next week, the big one, Mulan, is hitting Disney Plus. I might have watched it already. So,
I might be watching it tonight.
Oh, I don't know if. We made a little Mulan night of it last
Aw.
night. So, watch the
You and
original.
Cody? No.
Yeah. I had him in an arm bar. Figure 4, Boston Crab. Just throwing out wrestling things that I know. Mulan is hitting Disney Plus for the kind of future of premium VOD, I think, is stuff like this. It's going to cost a lot of money, but we've seen it, and we'll talk about it next week. What else, Cody?
We have the new Netflix Charlie Kaufman movie, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. We also have a documentary that I saw as part of the would-be South by Southwest Film Festival. It's called Feels Good Man, which is...
Oh, about Pepe the Frog.
Yeah, it's about the cartoonist who made Pepe the Frog and had his cartoon taken by the alt-right. It's actually super great, and I'm really excited that it's coming out. I really liked it. And then also we have a documentary called Robin's Wish, which is a Robin Williams documentary about his final days.
That should be very sad. All right, if you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter at CineSnob, Facebook CineSnob Critic. Listen to our other podcasts, ReMCU and Quarren Stream. I'm trying to wrap this up quick because we're almost at 2 hours.
No, we need to hit 2 hours. We haven't done that in a long time.
Son of a bitch. Cody, you have your other shows, the Ramble. And,
Ramble Radio Tuesdays and Fridays. Ramble Prime on Wednesdays. Good Willow Hunting on Thursdays. And then also twitch.tv/CineSnob. Hi to everyone watching on Twitch.
Hi. You made it 2 hours.
God bless you. But one thing I'm doing now is I'm playing video games that are based on movies on Twitch, and so last week I played The Mask for Super Nintendo on Twitch, and it was fun.
It was bad
because I'm very bad at video games.
Jocelyn,
oh really? That's an interesting.
Yes. Jocelyn, are you good at video
about.
games?
I am. I'm excellent. In fact, when I was young, when the Super Nintendo was released, I would stay up all night playing it for like weeks, and then I would get so sick that I would stay home and play it, and it was this horrible cycle. Yeah, it was bad, and my parents had to hide it from me because I was so obsessed with it.
What was your game?
Just the normal Super Mario
World,
and then I also really liked Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong
Country.
Well, have you guys played?
It was on Super Nintendo.
Have you guys played The Mask?
No, I never played that.
No, the movie games are notoriously terrible, which is
the whole idea.
Yeah,
I liked The Lion King. I remember
that is a great game. That is a great game. Yeah, that one and Aladdin are really two great movie games.
I've heard that True Lies is pretty good. The True Lies Super Nintendo game.
I mean, obviously the crown jewel of movie video games is GoldenEye.
Oh
yeah,
I mean by far.
Yeah. Anything else before we go? We've hit 2 hours now, so
yeah.
All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafano.
And I'm Jocelyn Duran.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.